The jackhammer's roar pierced the morning silence as Sarah watched 12 years of memories crumble into concrete dust. But when her neighbor Karen came charging across the yard, screaming about property values and legal action, Sarah had no idea she was about to uncover a web of lies that would turn their quiet suburban street into a battleground. The pool removal was just the beginning. What Karen was really hiding would bring the police, expose decades of deception, and reveal that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones living right next door. Sarah Martinez pressed her palm against the cool kitchen window, watching the demolition crew set up their equipment in her backyard. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete that had once been her family's pride and joy, a pristine blue pool where her children had learned to swim, where birthday parties had echoed with laughter, where her late husband David had spent countless evenings floating on his back, staring at the stars. Now it was just an expensive hole in the ground, a constant reminder of dreams that had died with him. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" Her daughter Emma's voice carried a hint of uncertainty as she joined Sarah at the window, cradling a steaming cup of coffee. "The maintenance alone costs more than my monthly mortgage payment," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach, "and I can't look at it anymore without seeing him there." Emma squeezed her mother's shoulder. "Dad would understand. He'd want you to be practical." The screech of metal on concrete made them both wince as the crew began their work. Sarah had hired Apex Demolition after getting 3 quotes, choosing them not because they were the cheapest, but because the foreman, Miguel Santos, had looked her in the eye and promised they'd treat her property with respect. At 62, Sarah had learned to trust her instincts about people. "Besides," she continued, attempting lightness, "I've always wanted to try vegetable gardening. Maybe I'll finally grow those tomatoes David used to buy from the farmer's market." The jackhammer roared to life, and Sarah felt each impact reverberate through her chest. 12 years of chlorine-scented summers, of diving competitions between her kids, of David's terrible cannonballs that splashed half the patio wall of it being systematically erased. Mrs. Martinez. Miguel appeared at her back door, his hard hat tucked under his arm. "We're ready to begin the main demolition. It's going to get loud for the next few hours. Of course, thank you for letting me know." As Miguel walked back to his crew, Sarah noticed a figure emerging from the house next door. Karen Whitmore moved with the purposeful stride of someone who had appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial supervisor. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair caught the morning light, and even from a distance, Sarah could see the disapproving set of her mouth. "Oh no," Emma muttered. "Here comes the HOA police." Karen had moved in 3 years ago, immediately after her divorce, and had since made it her mission to ensure every lawn was precisely manicured, every fence was regulation height, and every renovation was subject to her personal approval. The fact that their subdivision had no actual HOA didn't seem to deter her from acting like she ran one. "Maybe she's just curious," Sarah said, though she knew better. The jackhammer's rhythm intensified as it bit into the pool's deep end. Chunks of concrete tumbled into the growing pit, and Sarah felt a strange mixture of relief and loss. This was necessary. This was healing. This was stop right now. Karen's voice cut through the mechanical noise like a siren. She was marching across Sarah's yard, her designer yoga pants and matching top making her look like she was headed to a country club board meeting rather than a construction site. Miguel looked up from his work, confusion creasing his weathered face. "Ma'am, this is private property. You can't." "I certainly can." Karen's voice climbed higher. "This is affecting my property value. You can't just destroy a pool without proper permits and environmental impact studies." Sarah felt her blood pressure spike. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. Emma closed behind. "Karen, good morning," Sarah called out, her voice deliberately calm. Karen whirled around, her eyes blazing. "You're demolishing a major water feature without consulting anyone. Do you have any idea what this will do to the neighborhood's aesthetic appeal?" "It's my pool on my property," Sarah replied evenly. "I have all the necessary permits." "Show me." The demand hung in the air like a challenge. Miguel's crew had stopped working, sensing the tension. Sarah's neighbors were beginning to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion. "I don't need to show you anything, Karen. This is none of your business. Everything in this neighborhood is my business." I've worked too hard to maintain property values to have them destroyed by some impulsive decision. Emma stepped forward, her voice sharp with anger. Impulsive. My mother has been agonizing over this decision for months. And who are you to make decisions about what's best for the neighborhood? Karen shot back. You don't even live here. She's my daughter, Sarah said quietly, but there was steel in her voice, and she's welcome in my home any time she wants to be here. Karen's face flushed red. This is exactly what I'm talking about. No consideration for the community, no respect for what the rest of us have invested in this area. Sarah's composure finally cracked. I've lived here for 15 years. I've watched children grow up on this street. I've organized block parties. I've helped neighbors through emergencies. What have you done besides complain? I've protected our property values. I've made sure this neighborhood maintains its standards. Standards? Sarah laughed bitterly. You mean your standards? Since when did you become the authority on what's acceptable in our neighborhood? The jackhammer roared back to life as Miguel, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation, resumed. His work. The sound seemed to enrage Karen further. Turn that off. Turn it off right now. She lunged toward the equipment, but Miguel quickly stepped between her and the machinery. Ma'am, I need you to step back. Not authorized to be here. I'm calling the police. Karen pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. This is harassment. This is destruction of neighborhood property. It's not neighborhood property, Sarah said firmly. It's my property. And if you don't leave right now, I'll be the one calling the police. But Karen was already speaking into her phone, her voice taking on a different tone, higher, more frantic. Yes, I need officers to respond to 1247 Maple Street immediately. There's a woman here who's destroying property and threatening me. She has construction workers who are being aggressive, and that's not what's happening, Emma interrupted. But Karen continued her performance. I'm in fear for my safety. Please send someone right away. She hung up and turned back to Sarah with a triumphant smile. We'll see what the police have to say about your little project. Sarah felt the familiar tightness in her chest that always came with confrontation. David had always been the one to handle difficult neighbors, difficult situations. He'd had a way of diffusing tension with his easy laugh and diplomatic words. But David was gone, and she was tired of being pushed around. Fine, she said. Let's get this sorted out once and for all. The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence. Karen positioned herself on the edge of Sarah's property line, arms crossed, watching the demolition crew work. Every few minutes, she'd make a pointed comment about noise ordinances or environmental regulations. Loud enough for everyone to hear, Sarah tried to focus on practical matters, discussing timeline and cleanup procedures with Miguel, but she could feel Karen's hostile presence like a persistent headache. Other neighbors had gathered in small clusters, some openly curious, others clearly uncomfortable with the drama unfolding in their quiet subdivision. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down approached. Sarah, with a concerned expression, "Is everything okay, dear?" Karen seems very upset. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Chen. Just a misunderstanding." But even as she said it, Sarah knew it wasn't true. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something deeper, something that had been building for months. Karen's constant criticism of her landscaping, her pointed comments about property maintenance, her obvious disapproval of Sarah's choice to remain in the family home after David's death, it all felt like part of a larger pattern. The police? Cruiser pulled up just as Miguel's crew was taking their lunch break. Officer Janet Rodriguez, a compact woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, approached the group with the weary expression of someone who'd handled too many neighbor disputes. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice carrying professional authority. "I understand there's been some kind of disagreement about construction work." Karen immediately launched into her prepared statement. Without proper permits, creating a public nuisance, and her workers threatened me when I tried to intervene. "That's absolutely not true," Sarah said firmly. "I have all the required permits, and no one threatened anyone." She came onto my property uninvited and tried to interfere with legally authorized construction. Officer Rodriguez looked between the 2 women, clearly assessing the situation. "Ma'am," she addressed Karen, "can you show me how this Sarah barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside her window, made her heart race. Locks on her doors? By morning, exhaustion weighed on her like a lead blanket. but she forced herself through her routine, began filling the space with clean dirt, normal productive activities that should have felt therapeutic, looking for signs of movement, of surveillance, of whatever came next in this escalating nightmare. "Have you considered getting a security system? Maybe some cameras?" Sarah replied, though the idea had crossed her mind multiple times during the sleepless night. After hanging up, Sarah stood in her kitchen, staring at the business card officer Rodriguez had left behind. The officer had mentioned that Karen would likely face charges for disturbing the peace and possible harassment. Sarah felt a surge of relief. Normal sounds, normal activity, normal people doing normal work. "Morning, Mrs. Martinez," Miguel called out, but his usual cheerful demeanor seemed strained. It was ... intense. "Mrs. Martinez, I've seen people get upset about construction, noise complaints, dust, scheduling conflicts. Unknown number. Hello?" Silence, then the sound of breathing. "Hello," she repeated, louder this time. The line went dead, but as she slipped the phone back into her pocket, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been listening, waiting, measuring her response. The morning progressed smoothly. The concrete was loaded and hauled away, leaving behind a surprisingly neat rectangular hole in her backyard, of normalcy that Sarah desperately needed. Around 11, Mrs. Chen appeared at Sarah's fence, carrying a plate covered with aluminum foil. "I brought you some cookies," she said, though her smile seemed forced. "I thought you might need something comforting after yesterday." "That's very thoughtful, Mrs. Chen. Thank you." "Sarah, can I ask you something?" The older woman glanced around nervously. "Has Karen ever bothered you before yesterday? Asked strange questions, watched your house, that sort of thing?" The question hung in the air between them. Sarah realized she'd been avoiding this conversation, even with herself. "Why do you ask?" Mrs. Chen fidgeted with her hands. Neighbor way. In a calculating way, Sarah's blood chilled. "What kind of questions? I thought it was just nosiness at first, but after yesterday..." Mrs. Chen shook her head. "I think there's something wrong with that woman. How long has she been asking these questions? Months, since shortly after she moved in. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want to cause drama." Sarah felt the world tilt slightly. She'd been investigating Sarah's life, her vulnerabilities, her circumstances. But why? Mrs. Chen, did she ever explain why she was asking? She said she was concerned about property values, about making sure the neighborhood maintained its standards. It felt like she was looking for something specific. The sound of a car door slamming made both women turn. Karen was walking up Sarah's driveway, her movements deliberate and controlled. Gone was yesterday's wild-eyed hysteria. "Ladies," Karen said, her voice unnaturally calm. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Mrs. Chen took a step back. "Karen, I should go. I have groceries in the car." "Of course you do." Karen's smile was sharp. "Give my regards to..." She hurried away without another word, leaving Sarah alone with Karen. "What do you want?" Sarah asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "I want to apologize," Karen said, though her tone suggested anything but remorse. "I was upset yesterday, emotionally. You know how it is when you're passionate about something. Maintaining the community we've all worked so hard to build." Karen's eyes swept over the construction site. "I realize I may have overreacted to your ... decision. All the implications. Financial implications, legal implications, social implications. What are you talking about? Sometimes they require additional environmental assessments, materials." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Miguel has all the proper permits and disposal procedures." Karen's voice took on a helpful tone that somehow felt more threatening than her previous anger. "I'd hate for you to face any unexpected legal challenges. Are you threatening me?" Karen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Of course not. I'm just a concerned neighbor offering friendly advice. After all, we'll be living next to each other for a long time. It's important that we understand each other." This was about power, about control, about Karen establishing dominance in some twisted game that Sarah was only beginning to understand, her mask of civility starting to slip. Some choices have consequences that last much longer than you might expect. She turned to go, then paused. "Oh, and Sarah." Sarah watched Karen walk away, her movements unhurried and confident. Only when she was safely back in her own house did Sarah allow herself to breathe normally again. The mailbox contained the usual collection of bills and advertisements, but wedged between a credit card offer and a grocery store flyer was a manila envelope with no return address. Kind of careful penmanship that suggested someone trying to disguise their handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a printed message. Some secrets are better left buried. Some neighbors are better left alone. As she read the words again, this wasn't a random threat. This was personal, specific, and it suggested that Karen knew something about her family, about her life that she wasn't supposed to know. Martinez, we spoke yesterday about my neighbor Karen Whitmore, right? How can I help you? I received a threatening note today, anonymous, but I'm pretty sure it's from her. With each word, that's definitely harassment, Rodriguez said. Start keeping a record of any contact she makes with you. Times, dates, what was said. This kind of behavior usually escalates. Escalates how? Hard to say. But people who make anonymous threats rarely stop there. Staring at the note, some secrets are better left buried. What secrets? What could Karen possibly know about her life that Sarah herself didn't know? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your husband's old office. Third drawer, left side. Some surprises waiting. Sarah's heart stopped. Dav. Sarah's grip tightened on the baseball bat as Karen's footsteps moved through her kitchen. The casual confidence in those steps was more terrifying than any scream or threat. This wasn't the behavior of someone having a breakdown. This was someone executing a plan. I know you found the letters, Karen called up conversationally. I knew you would eventually. You're methodical, just like David was. It's one of the things I admired about him. Stay away from me, Sarah's voice cracked. Despite her efforts to sound strong, the police are coming. No, they're not. Your phone is down here on the kitchen counter. You dropped it when you ran upstairs. Karen's voice was moving closer to the stairway. Besides, you're going to want to hear this story. It's about justice, Sarah, about getting what's rightfully ours. Sarah's mind raced. The landline in the bedroom, did it still work? She hadn't used it in months. Her cell phone was indeed downstairs, forgotten in her panic. The windows were too high to jump from safely, and Karen was positioned between her and the only exit. You're insane if you think I'm going to believe. You killed my husband, Sarah called down, hoping to keep Karen talking while she figured out an escape plan. Insane, Karen laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused. Sarah, I'm a lawyer, or was, until your husband ruined my career. Everything I've done has been perfectly calculated. David was an accountant. He didn't even know you existed until you moved in next door. Oh, he knew me. He just didn't remember me. Karen's voice was closer now, definitely at the bottom. Of the stairs, 12 years ago, I was handling a property development case. Complex stuff: water rights, environmental impact, subdivision approval. Your husband was the forensic accountant hired to review the financial records. Sarah's heart sank. David had worked on dozens of cases like that throughout his career. He'd been meticulous, honest, and thorough, qualities that had sometimes made him enemies among developers who cut corners. He found discrepancies in the books, Karen continued, payments that couldn't be accounted for, environmental assessments that were never actually conducted, permits that were backdated, standard stuff really. But David couldn't let it go. He was doing his job. He was destroying people's lives. The development company went under. My law firm lost its biggest client. Partners who had been with the firm for decades saw their retirement funds evaporate overnight. Sarah pressed herself against the bedroom wall, trying to think. Cassie vaguely remembered David working late nights on something involving a subdivision, but it had been years ago. He'd mentioned it was complicated, that there were people who weren't happy with his findings. So you decided to get revenge. 12 years later, I decided to get justice. It took me time to track down everyone who had been affected by David's thoroughness, but I'm patient, I'm methodical, just like him. The first stair creaked under Karen's weight. Sarah grabbed the landline phone from the nightstand. No dial tone. Karen had probably cut the line. The property claim is real. By the way, Karen continued, her voice now coming from halfway up the stairs. My great-grandmother's will was very specific about the land rights. The original developer never should have sold this lot to your builder. Then why not file a lawsuit like a normal person? Because normal legal channels take years, and I don't have years. I have debts, Sarah, serious debts, the kind that people break legs over if they're not paid soon. Sarah's mind raced. A desperate lawyer with gambling debts, or worse, using her legal knowledge to run elaborate property scams. It made a sick kind of sense, but David's death was convenient timing. Karen's voice was now at the top of the stairs, just outside the bedroom door. I'd been watching your family for months, waiting for the right opportunity. When David started having chest pains, when he was obviously under stress from work, well, sometimes opportunity and planning converge beautifully. Sarah's blood turned to ice. You gave him something. I gave him information. Claim about how much money he was going to cost you in legal fees. About how his past was about to catch up with him in a very expensive way. Karen's voice was right outside the door now. Did you know that stress can trigger heart attacks in people who are already vulnerable, especially when they're confronted with the possibility of losing everything they've worked for? The bedroom door handle turned slowly. I visited him at his office that day, showed him the documents, explained exactly how I was going to tie up your property in legal challenges for years, how I was going to make sure everyone knew that his forensic work had been sloppy, that he'd destroyed innocent people's lives over technical violations. Sarah raised the baseball bat, her hand shaking. You're lying, am I? Karen stepped into the room, and Sarah was shocked by how normal she looked. No wild eyes, no disheveled appearance. Just a middle-aged woman in neat clothes, speaking in a calm, reasonable tone about murder. He was already sweating when I left, already clutching his chest. I just helped nature take its course. The police will figure it out. They'll investigate. Investigate what? A man with a history of heart problems who died of a heart attack. There's no evidence of foul play, Sarah. No poison, no violence, no signs of struggle. Just stress-induced cardiac arrest brought on by the revelation that his past mistakes were about to destroy his family's future. Sarah's back was against the wall now, literally and figuratively. Karen stood in the doorway, blocking the only exit, her expression almost sympathetic. I didn't want it to come to this, Karen said softly. I hoped you'd be reasonable. Sell the house, move somewhere more affordable, take the life insurance money, and start over. But then you had to go and remove the pool. What does the pool have to do with anything? Everything. Karen's mask finally slipped, revealing the calculating predator beneath. The pool was built over the original property marker. As long as it was there intact, no one would think to dig down and find the stone boundary markers that prove my claim, but you had to go and expose everything. Sarah's mind raced. The property dispute is fake. That's why you didn't want the pool removed. You knew there was nothing buried there to support your claim. Very good, but it doesn't matter what's real and what isn't. What matters is what I can prove in court and what I can make you believe. And right now, I need you to believe that you're going to sign over the deed to this house, or things are going to get much worse for you. I'll never sign anything. You will if you want to see your daughter again. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Emma, what have you done? Nothing yet, but she has such a predictable routine. Coffee at the same shop every morning. Yoga class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, grocery shopping on Saturdays. It would be so easy for someone to accidentally encounter her. Sarah's maternal instincts overwhelmed her fear. She swung the bat with all her strength, but Karen was ready. She ducked and lunged forward, grabbing Sarah's wrist and twisting until the bat clattered to the floor. I really hoped it wouldn't. Come to this, Karen said, her voice strained as they struggled. But you're just as stubborn as your husband. Sarah fought with desperate strength, but Karen was younger and had the advantage of preparation. They crashed into the dresser, sending picture frames and jewelry boxes flying. Sarah managed to break free and stumble toward the door, but Karen caught her ankle and sent her sprawling. You know what the beautiful part is? Karen panted, pinning Sarah to the floor. Even if something happens to you, it won't look suspicious. Grieving widow, financial stress, empty house after the kids move out. Depression is a terrible thing. Sometimes people just ... give up. Sarah bucked and twisted, managing to get one hand free. Her fingers found a heavy crystal paperweight that had fallen from the dresser. Without thinking, she swung it at Karen's head. The impact was sickening. Karen's eyes rolled back and she collapsed, blood seeping from a gash above her ear. Scrambled to her feet, gasping. Karen was breathing but unconscious, her face pale and slack. For a moment, Sarah felt a surge of guilty relief. She'd defended herself, and Karen was still alive. Then she saw the notebook that had fallen from Karen's jacket pocket. Sarah picked it up with trembling hands. Page after page of meticulous observations: Sarah's daily routine, Emma's schedule, David's work patterns before his death. Photos of the house, the yard, the pool, floor plans showing the layout of every room. But the most chilling entry was dated 3 days ago. Pool removal. Scheduled. Property markers will be exposed. Must accelerate timeline. If S discovers documents, implement final protocol. Final protocol. Sarah flipped to the back of the notebook and found a detailed plan for making her death look like suicide. Karen had researched methods, timing, even the specific wording for a fake suicide note that would explain Sarah's guilt over David's death and her inability to cope with the financial pressures. Sarah's hands shook as she read her own supposed final words, written in Karen's careful handwriting. A groan from the floor made her look up. Karen was stirring, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw Sarah standing over her with the notebook, her expression shifted from. The arrest was humiliating but not unexpected. Officer Rodriguez's expression was carefully neutral as she read Sarah her rights. But Sarah could see the disappointment in her eyes. Another domestic dispute gone wrong. Another neighbor feud escalated to violence. But you have to listen to me. Check her background, check the property records, check, ma'am. You have the right to remain silent, Rodriguez interrupted. I'd suggest using it. Karen stood in the hallway, the picture of wounded innocence. A paramedic was cleaning the gash on her head while she gave her statement to another officer, her voice trembling with apparent trauma. When I knocked, she invited me in. But then she just ... snapped. Started accusing me of impossible things, talking about conspiracies and murder plots. Sarah wanted to scream, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Every word she said now would be used against her later. Better to save her fight for when she had a lawyer present. As they led her to the patrol car, Sarah caught sight of Miguel watching from her backyard. His expression was troubled, uncertain, good. At least someone had doubts about the official story. The booking process was a blur of fingerprints, photographs, and paperwork. Sarah was charged with assault in the second degree and breaking and entering. Apparently, Karen was claiming that Sarah had forced her way into Karen's house first, which explained why Karen had been defending herself in Sarah's bedroom. It was masterfully done, every detail crafted to support Karen's version of events. Sarah's one phone call went to Emma, who arrived at the police station 3 hours later with a lawyer in tow. Jennifer Walsh was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, who specialized in domestic violence cases, though usually representing the actual victims. Mom, what the hell happened? Emma's eyes were red from crying. I need you to listen. Very carefully, Sarah said, her voice steady, despite everything. And I need you to believe me, even though it sounds impossible. Over the next hour, Sarah laid out everything she had discovered about Karen Whitmore. The property fraud, the harassment campaign, the surveillance, David's murder. Emma's expression shifted from disbelief to horror to cold fury. We need to prove this, Emma said when Sarah finished. There has to be evidence. The notebook Karen had eaten gone. Jennifer Walsh had been taking notes throughout Sarah's account. Mrs. Martinez, I have to ask, do you have any documentation of these? Claims, phone records, witness statements, anything concrete? The text message about David's office came from an unknown number. And Mrs. Chen heard Karen asking questions about our family finances. That's a start, but it's circumstantial. We need something more substantial. Emma leaned forward. What about the property records Mom found? The fake legal claim. If we can prove the documents were forged, that's fraud, but that's a separate criminal matter. It doesn't help with the assault charges your mother is facing. Sarah felt the walls closing in. Karen had planned this too well, anticipated every possible defense. But then she remembered something. Jennifer, what if Karen has done this before? What if we're not her first targets? What do you mean? She mentioned having debts, serious debts, and she's clearly perfected this psychological manipulation technique. What if there are other widows, other families she's targeted. Jennifer's eyes sharpened. If we could establish a pattern of behavior, that would change everything. The voice came from the doorway, where Miguel Santos stood with his hard hat in his hands. I've been thinking about what happened today, and something doesn't add up. Sarah felt a surge of hope. Miguel, what are you doing here? My wife made me come. Free. He approached their table carefully. Mrs. Martinez, when that woman said you attacked her in her house, that's not possible. Why not? Because I've been working in your backyard for 3 days. Her house has been dark since yesterday morning. She wasn't home when you supposedly broke in. Jennifer sat up straighter. Are you willing to testify to that? Yes, ma'am. And there's something else. My crew noticed her watching your house through binoculars last week. We thought it was strange, but we minded our own business. Now I wish we'd said something. Sarah felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. Finally, someone who could corroborate her story. There's more, Miguel continued. After the police left today, I went back to finish the job. Found something buried where the pool used to be. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a plastic evidence bag containing what looked like fragments of paper and plastic. Looks like someone tried to burn documents and bury the remains. The concrete pour was supposed to happen tomorrow, which would have covered this up permanently. Jennifer examined the bag. What kind of documents? Hard to tell, but I recognize bank letterhead on some of the pieces and what looks like insurance forms. Sarah's heart raced. She was destroying evidence. Everything that connected her to other victims, other property frauds. And we need to find out where Karen Whitmore has been living. For the past 3 years, who she's been targeting, what kind of debts she really has. I can help with that too. Emma pulled out her laptop. I'm a digital forensic specialist. Give me a few hours, and I can trace her financial history, her previous addresses, any legal judgments against her. For the first time since David's death, Sarah felt like she wasn't fighting alone. A team was forming around her, people who believed in her innocence and were willing to help prove it. But their optimism was short-lived. When they tried to present the new evidence to the prosecutor, due to complications in the local district attorney's office, the new prosecutor, James Chen, no relation to Sarah's neighbor, was unsympathetic. Mrs. Martinez assaulted her neighbor with a deadly weapon, he said coldly. The victim required medical treatment. We have witness statements confirming that assault took place. Everything else is speculation and conspiracy theories. What about the evidence we found? What evidence? I see some burned paper fragments that could be anything, and testimony from workers who weren't present during the actual assault. Sarah realized with growing dread that Karen's influence extended beyond just her immediate plan. Somehow, she'd managed to get Sarah's case transferred to a prosecutor who is either already compromised or simply unwilling to consider alternative explanations. How long have you known Karen Whitmore? Sarah asked Chen directly. I don't know what you're implying, Mrs. Martinez, but she's gotten to you too, hasn't she? She'll promise you. What does she have on you? That's enough. Chen stood up abruptly. Mrs. Martinez, you're facing serious charges. I'd suggest you focus on accepting responsibility for your actions instead of constructing elaborate fantasies about conspiracy plots. As they left the prosecutor's office, Jennifer's face was grim. We're not going to get justice through normal channels. Karen has been planning this for too long, and she's covered too many bases. So what do? Emma asked. We investigate on our own. We find her other victims, we trace her financial connections, and we build a case so airtight that even a compromised prosecutor can't ignore it. How long will that take? Months, maybe longer. Sarah felt despair wash over her. I can't wait. Months. She's living in my neighborhood, threatening my family, and I'm the one sitting in jail. Actually, Miguel said quietly, there might be another way. They all turned to look at him. My cousin works for the phone company. If we can get him the number that texted you about your husband's office, he might be able to trace it. And my wife's sister works at the county clerk's office. She could check what other property disputes Karen has filed in the past few years. That's illegal, Jennifer warned. But it might point us toward legal evidence, Emma argued. And right now, we need to know what we're really dealing with. Sarah made a decision that would have shocked her a week ago. Do it, all of it. Karen destroyed the rules when she killed my husband. I'm not going to let her win because I was too polite to fight back. 24 hours later, they had their answers. The phone number that had sent Sarah the text message was registered to a burner phone purchased with cash, but the phone company records showed it had been activated near Karen's previous address in Portland, Oregon. More importantly, all involving recently widowed women, all following the same pattern. Karen Whitmore wasn't just a disgraced lawyer seeking revenges, was a serial predator who had been perfecting her technique for years. Jennifer Walsh argued for house arrest, citing Sarah's clean record and community ties. While privately hoping the judge would agree to electronic monitoring that would allow Sarah to move freely within her neighborhood, they needed her visible and available for Karen's next move. Judge Patricia Ramirez was a stern woman who had seen every kind of domestic dispute in her 20-year career. But something about Sarah's case troubled her. This inconsistencies in the police reports, the victim's oddly detailed knowledge of legal procedures, and the growing list of character witnesses willing to testify on Sarah's behalf. "Mrs. Martinez, you're charged with serious crimes," Judge Ramirez said. "However, given your lack of prior record and the unusual circumstances surrounding this case, I'm granting bail with house arrest provisions." Sarah felt relief flood. Through her, as the electronic ankle monitor was fitted, she would be confined to her property, but she would be home. More importantly, she would be exactly where Karen expected her to be. The plan they developed was dangerous and probably illegal, but it was their only shot at stopping Karen before she disappeared or claimed another victim. Emma had identified Karen's most likely next target, Rebecca Williams, a 58-year-old widow whose husband had died 3 months ago, leaving her a substantial insurance settlement and a valuable property just 20 miles away. She fits the profile perfectly, Emma explained as they gathered in Sarah's kitchen the evening after her release. Recent widow, living alone, significant assets, and her husband's death involved a heart attack under stressful circumstances. Karen would need to establish herself in Rebecca's life gradually, build trust before making her move. Based on the other cases, she's probably already made contact. Miguel shifted, uncomfortably, in his chair. "I still don't like this plan." "If Karen realizes it's a trap, she won't," Jennifer interrupted, "because she thinks she's already won. Sarah is under house arrest, facing criminal charges, and completely discredited. In Karen's mind, she's untouchable. What if she's already moved on to Rebecca Williams? Then we'll catch her there. But I don't think she has. Karen is too methodical to abandon a 3-year investment in this neighborhood. She wants to finish what she started here first." Sarah stood at her kitchen window, looking across the yard toward Karen's house. The lights were on again. Karen was back, probably playing the role of the traumatized victim recovering from her neighbor's violent attack. "She's going to come for me," Sarah said with certainty. "Not immediately, but soon. She can't let me live knowing what I know, even if no one believes me." "That's what we're counting on," Jennifer replied. "But this time, we'll be ready." The surveillance equipment arrived the next morning, disguised as routine home security upgrades. Emma worked with a team of private investigators to install nearly invisible cameras throughout Sarah's property, audio recording devices, and GPS tracking on all vehicles. If Karen made a move, they would have everything documented. The waiting was the hardest part. Sarah maintained her normal routine. For 3 days, nothing happened. Karen went to grocery stores, visited a medical clinic for follow-up treatment of her head injury, and spent long hours in her house with the curtains drawn. On the 4th day, Rebecca Williams called the police to report a break-in at her home, particularly his insurance documents and property records. "She's accelerating her timeline," Emma said when she got the news. "Something has her spooked. Maybe she knows we're watching her," Miguel suggested. "Or maybe her creditors are getting impatient," Jennifer added grimly. "Either way, she's going to make her move soon." That evening, Sarah was washing dishes when she saw Karen emerge from her house and walk directly towards Sarah's front door. No pretense of casual neighborly visits this time. This was purposeful, determined. Sarah activated the recording system Emma had taught her to use and answered the door with her hand on the pepper spray hidden in her pocket. "Hello, Karen, Sarah." Karen's smile was cold and satisfied. "How are you adjusting to house arrest? I imagine it must feel quite limiting." "What do you want?" "I want to make you an offer. A final offer, really." Karen glanced around casually, as if checking for surveillance. You're facing serious criminal charges, expensive legal fees, possible prison time, certainly the loss of your home to pay for your defense. I'm not selling my house to you. Oh, you won't be selling it to me directly. That would look suspicious, wouldn't it? No, you'll be selling it to a development company. Fair market value, quick closing, no questions asked. Karen's smile widened. Of course, what happens to the property after that is entirely up to the new owners. And if I refuse, then you'll go to prison and your house will be sold anyway to pay your legal bills. The only difference is that you won't get to control the sale price or terms. Sarah forced herself to appear defeated. How do I know you'll keep your word? How do I know you won't just destroy me anyway? Because, Sarah, I'm not a monster. I'm a businesswoman. I get what I want. You get to avoid prison and start fresh somewhere else. Everyone wins except for David. Karen's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the cold calculation beneath. David made his choices. He destroyed my career, my firm, my future. Everything that's happened since then is simply ... balance. You killed him, I educated him. About consequences, about how his actions had ripple effects he never considered. The fact that the stress of that education proved fatal, well, that's unfortunate, but not my responsibility. Sarah felt rage building in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. The cameras were recording everything, but she needed Karen to be more explicit. How many others have there been? How many widows have you educated? As many as necessary. Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Do you want to know the beautiful part, Sarah? No one ever believes them. Grieving widows are so unstable, so prone to paranoid delusions and conspiracy theories. Even when they try to warn the police, they just sound crazy, like Maria Santos in Phoenix. Karen's eyes sharpened. How do you know that name? She didn't commit suicide, did she? You helped her along, just like you did with David. Maria was weak. She couldn't handle the pressure of losing everything she thought was hers. Some people break under stress. Sarah, the question is, are you going to be one of them? What about Rebecca Williams? Is she your next project? Karen's expression turned dangerous. I think you've been doing too much research for someone under house arrest. That's going to stop now. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small bottle. Do you know what digitalis is, Sarah? It's a heart medication, but in the right dosage, it can simulate a perfectly natural cardiac event, especially in someone who's been under enormous stress. You're threatening to poison me. I'm offering you a choice. Sign the property, transfer documents I have in my car, or join your husband a lot sooner than you planned. Karen's smile was cold as winter. I've been very patient with you, but my patience has limits. And if I sign, then you get to live long enough to see your daughter graduate, maybe get married, have children. Isn't that worth more than a house? Sarah pretended to consider the offer, while her mind raced. She needed Karen to confess to David's murder. On tape, and she needed her to reveal details about her other victims. But Karen was getting suspicious, and the digitalis threat was real. You're right, Sarah said finally. I knew you'd see reason. The documents are in my car. This will all be over in just a few minutes. But as Karen turned to leave, Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. Karen, wait, I have one question. What did you really think you were smart enough to get away with this? Karen's expression shifted to confusion. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the FBI agents watching your house right now. I'm talking about the federal investigation into your interstate fraud operation. I'm talking about the fact that everything you just said was recorded and transmitted directly to law enforcement. Karen's face went white. You're lying. I look around, Karen. Really look. As if on cue, spotlights blazed to life around Sarah's property. FBI agents emerged from concealment positions, their weapons drawn and voices commanding. Karen Whitmore, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, interstate racketeering, and multiple counts of murder. Karen spun around wildly, looking for an escape route, but she was surrounded. The digitalis bottle fell from her hand and shattered on the concrete. This isn't possible, she gasped. I planned everything perfectly. You did, Sarah agreed. But you made one crucial mistake. What mistake? You assumed I was just another grieving widow who would break under pressure. You never considered that I might fight back. As the agents handcuffed Karen, she turned to Sarah with pure hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over. I have lawyers." "I have connections," had Sarah corrected, past tense. "Because while you were focused on me, my team was busy exposing your entire operation. Every Vic,